My name is Ethan Winters, and I never set out to become an accidental master of espionage. But that's exactly what happened when I uncovered the shocking truth about my wife, Natalie. We had been married for 23 years and had two wonderful kids together. Our daughter Lily, who was 16, and our son Jack, who had just turned 14. From the outside looking in, we were the perfect family living a charmed life in the suburbs of Seattle. It all began on an ordinary Tuesday when I came home early for my job as a software engineer. I walked in the front door and heard Natalie's voice drifting down from our upstairs bedroom. She was on the phone, and her tone immediately set off alarm bells in my head. Yes, baby, today was amazing. I loved every second of it. She purred in a breathy voice I'd never heard her use with me. I crept up the stairs, careful not to make a sound. The bedroom door was ajar, and I peeked in, my heart hammering against my ribcage. Natalie was standing in front of the full-length mirror, admiring herself as she slowly peeled off a slinky black dress I'd never seen before. She had on lacy red lingerie underneath that definitely wasn't from her usual practical cotton panty and bra sets. I wish I could stay on the phone longer, but I need to jump in the shower before Ethan gets home, she said to whoever was on the other end. Last thing I need is for him to catch on. She ended the call, and as she turned to toss her phone on the bed, I spotted an unmistakable red mark on the side of her neck, a fresh hickey I most certainly hadn't put there. Natalie noticed it too as she examined her reflection, letting out a frustrated sigh. Shit now. I'll have to cover this up somehow. Why does he always have to leave a mark? She grumbled to herself before padding into the ensuite bathroom. The first thing I did was check Natalie's phone after she went to take a shower. Unsurprisingly, it now had a passcode lock on it, which was out of character for her. In 23 years of marriage, she'd never once felt the need to keep her cell phone private for me. I grabbed the lacy red thong she'd cast off onto the floor and slipped it into a Ziploc bag I took from the kitchen. Maybe it was the software engineer in me, but my first thought was to have the DNA analyzed to see if I could get a match on the man horror defiling my marital bed. My company had a high-tech biolab that did cutting-edge forensic work I could probably sneak it into for testing. Next, I set up a hidden video camera in our bedroom, positioning it to have a clear view of the bed in the mirror where Natalie had been checking out her illicit love bites. If she was going to turn our home into her den of adultery, I was damn well going to catch it all on tape. I knew I needed to get out of the house before Natalie finished her shower of shame. I was liable to confront her, and I didn't want to tip my hand until I had rock-solid evidence of what she'd been up to. I went to a local dive bar to gather my thoughts over a stiff drink or three. The place was called Hank's Tavern, and I'd passed it a million times, but never gone in. It had a certain seedy charm that matched my mood. I sat at the bar, and the young bartender came over with an appraising look. "You seem like you could use a double." "Rough day," she asked. "You could say," that I said with a brittle laugh. "I'll take a whiskey neat one double coming right up." "I'm Jenna, by the way," she said, flashing me a sympathetic smile as she poured a generous 4 fingers worth into a glass. "Thanks, Jenna. I'm Ethan," I replied, taking a long sip that burned all the way down. Over the next hour, the drinks and the conversation flowed. I didn't mention anything about my cheating wife, but it was nice to talk to someone who wasn't wrapped up in the mess my life had suddenly become. By the time I stumbled home just before midnight, Natalie was already asleep, or pretending to be at least. Normally she slept in the nude, but tonight she was wearing a baggy t-shirt and shorts, no doubt to cover up any more marks from her extramarital sexcapades. I waited until I heard her breathing even out before I snuck back downstairs and fired up my laptop. I remotely accessed the camera I'd planted in our bedroom and started scouring through the day's footage. Most of it was unremarkable, but there was a telling clip from right after I'd left and Natalie had gotten out of the shower. She dropped her towel in front of the mirror and thoroughly examined the love bite on her neck, poking and prodding at it with a frown, as if that wasn't incriminating enough. She then rummaged through her underwear drawer and pulled out an entire collection of skimpy bras and panties I'd never laid eyes on before. She took her time selecting a matching black lace set and then hid the rest back in the drawer underneath her sensible cotton undies. I felt rage and nausea swirl in my gut as I watched my wife prance around in lingerie that was clearly for another man's enjoyment. I had seen enough to know that this was far from a one-time lapse in judgment. The next morning, I called up my best friend Cooper, who worked security at the naval base where Natalie was a part-time administrative assistant. Cooper was a no-nonsense former Marine who had a real talent for sniffing out bullshit. It was what made him so good at his job. "Co-op, I need your help with something." "It's a sensitive situation, but I don't know who else to turn to," I said when he picked up. "Of course, brother, whatever you need." "You know, I always got your six," he replied without hesitation, using the military slang for having someone's back. I filled him in on everything that had transpired in the last 24 hours, from walking in on Natalie's incriminating phone call to capturing her inspecting her cheating body on hidden camera. To his credit, Cooper listened without judgment, even letting out a low whistle when I got to the part about her secret lingerie collection. "Damn, Ethan, that's heavy. I'm so sorry. You're going through this, man, but we'll get to the bottom of it. I promise you." "Nobody pulls one over on a Winters on my watch," he vowed. Cooper had a deeply personal stake in this particular brand of betrayal. His ex-wife Hannah had done the same thing to him a few years back. She'd been stepping out with some puffed-up local accountant stringing Cooper along while she got her thrills elsewhere. It had damn near destroyed him when he found out. The divorce had been long and brutal and contentious. But he'd come out stronger in the end, and now he was determined to guide me through the same trial by fire. "Listen carefully. Here's what we're gonna do. Rule number one, trust. No one except me. Anyone could be conspiring to cover Natalie's tracks or could have known what she was up to this whole time. Compartmentalize this shit. All right, got it. Trust. No one except you," I affirmed. "Good. Now we need to deploy some more sophisticated surveillance to really map her movements and communications. I'm talking GPS tracker on her car, voice-activated recorders in your house in her vehicle, keylogger on her computer to capture texts and emails. The works. We mount a full-fledged domestic espionage campaign until all her dirty secrets are out in the open." It felt surreal to be plotting to spy on my own wife, but I knew Cooper was right. Half measures weren't going to cut it, not with how long Natalie had clearly been deceiving me. It was time to treat this like a special ops mission and get to the truth by any means necessary. "I'll get you all the gear and tech you need." Used to be real spook work, but a lot of it you can get at any electronics store these days. Scary how easy it is to play private eye, isn't it? Cooper said, "You're telling me feels like I'm living in a damn Lifetime movie thriller." I sighed, scrubbing a hand over my stubble. "But Coop, I appreciate you going above and beyond like this. I know it can't be easy given your history. I told you, Ethan. I got your back. Us military guys need to stick together. You're like a brother to me, and I'll be damned if I let some two-timing harlot put you through the same meat grinder. I went through with Hannah. This time we're gonna come out on top, and she won't even see it coming," he said fiercely. With the help of my man on the inside, I threw myself into investigating Natalie's duplicitous double life. Through the GPS logs, I traced every one of her suspicious errands and appointments. Before the week was out, I had mapped an airtight timeline of her entire affair. The computer keylogger and voice recorders provided the final missing pieces of the puzzle. I learned my wife's paramour was a scumbag named Blake Peterson who worked in some vague defense contractor role at the naval base. He had a wife and two young daughters at home while he snuck around seducing his coworkers. I captured incriminating snippets of conversation between Natalie and her enabling BFF Chelsea, dissecting the details of her tryst and mocking me for being clueless. Under the guise of installing a new Wi-Fi booster, I loaded spyware onto Natalie's laptop that gave me a front-row view to all her risque sexting sessions with Blake and calculated plans to throw me off. They're sent. Worst of all were the emails she sent him waxing poetic about their explosive sexual chemistry, but claiming his inability to commit was why she had to content herself by playing house with boring old Ethan. Reading those words felt like Natalie had plunged her manicured nails into my chest and brutally ripped my heart out. The audio surveillance in Natalie's SUV was equally damning. "Blake just goes at it. So fucking raw like an animal in heat. Definitely not something Ethan would ever do, she told Chelsea with a smug little laugh one morning driving to her Pilates class. God, that sounds amazing, babe. Ethan's just too vanilla for you, always has been. He's a sweet guy, but you need a real man like Blake. Chelsea concurred. You're so right, Chels, this double life thing is such a rush. Having my perfect little wifey persona with Ethan, but getting to be a total slut behind closed doors with Blake. I feel like a spy. I gritted my teeth until my jaw ached, my hands balled into fists at my sides. Every word was like a dagger to my battered heart. Who the hell was this woman I devoted half my life to? That night, the wires I planted in our marital bed picked up Natalie initiating sex, trying to paw at me through the covers. I'd been giving her the cold shoulder ever since my suspicions took hold, unable to even fathom being intimate with her. I shut her down, feigning exhaustion from a brutal week at work. She huffed in annoyance, flopping onto her back. Jesus, Ethan, would it kill you to put out once in a while? We never have sex anymore. I nearly doubled over from the sledgehammer of her hypocrisy, but choked back the bitter accusations clawing up my throat. Maybe I'd be more interested if my wife wasn't out screwing her coworker on the side. I thought darkly, but I had to bide my time and play the role of the hapless chump a little longer. Natalie couldn't know I was onto her until I had compiled the full dossier of her deceit. With Cooper's black ops skills and my own tech savvy, I'd be able to hit her with a reckoning beyond her worst nightmares. This pattern of close calls and covert fact-finding missions continued for another tense week. I practically took up residence in Hank's Tavern, the dim lighting and stiff drinks a temporary refuge from the daily assault on my psyche. Jenna, the bartender, started looking forward to my visits, always ready with a sympathetic ear and a generous poor eye. Learned she was working her way through nursing school, picking up shifts slinging booze to make ends meet. Her gentle kindness was an unexpected balm to my mangled soul. Cooper worked his military contacts to get more intel on Blake and uncovered the bastard's long history of procurement fraud and embezzlement. He'd been gouging the government for years on shady contracts and lining his own pockets. It made sense why a pissant like that would get his rocks off sneaking around with other men's wives. He got off on taking what wasn't his. This weasel isn't just a garden-variety adulterer. He's a crook and a predator. We can nail his ass to the wall for more than screwing around with Natalie if we play our cards right, Cooper said grimly. The proverbial final nail in the coffin came when I intercepted a string of messages Blake sent to Natalie, pressuring her to hook up at the seedy Apple Grove Motel during their lunch break the coming Wednesday. After digging through the base's security camera feeds, Cooper pinpointed Blake had been using this no-tell motel as the spot for his nooners with several women from work. It presented the perfect opportunity to get them both dead to rights. I know the owner of that motel. He's an old army buddy of mine. Rents out the rooms dirt cheap to enlisted guys. Cooper told me over a greasy burger and fries at Hank's. Can he get us in there before Blake and Natalie show up? Set up hidden cameras, so there's no shadows, no doubt about what they've done. I asked, oh, you'll get us full access. All right, owes me about a dozen favors. We can either book the room next door or set up shop right in their little love nest. Wherever it'll get us the best shot, he said, giving me a sly wink. Jenna came over to clear our plates, her blonde ponytail swing. You boys cooking up trouble again? She teased lightly. I forced a tight smile, not wanting her to worry. No more than usual, Jenna. But speaking of, why don't you let us cover your tab tonight? Call it a future nurse discount. Oh, stop. You don't have to do that, Ethan. I'm just glad to see you out of the house. You're in here more than my regulars some weeks, she said, squeezing my shoulder. No, I've been burning it at both ends lately. Just got a lot on my mind. But I do appreciate you putting up with my sorry ass. You're gonna make one hell of a nurse with that bedside manner, I said. Jenna ducked her head, a pretty blush coloring her cheeks. Well, when you put it that way, guess I can let you buy a round or two. Only because you asked so nicely, though. She sauntered off to handle her other tables, and Cooper let out a low whistle. That girl is into you, man. Don't think I haven't noticed all the doe eyes and hair twirling. Sure, go op. I'm just another middle-aged sad sack crying into his whiskey. She's probably used to humor in guys like me, so we don't get sloppy," I said, shaking my head. "Okay, Ethan, you keep telling yourself that I know." The day of reckoning arrived with a sense of grim satisfaction. Cooper and I staked out the Apple Grove Motel, watching from the room next door as Blake and Natalie arrived for their sordid midday rendezvous. Just as Cooper's army buddy had promised, we had the whole scene wired for sound and video from every angle. There would be no escape from the truth. Bile rose in my throat as their cruel laughter and ecstatic moans echoed through the tennis speakers. But I refused to look away even as the images seared into my brain. Let them be the starring players in the film that would rewrite both our futures. After they finished desecrating their marriage vows, I heard Natalie's muffled voice slightly out of breath. "God, Blake, why does it always have to be like this? Secretly sneaking around in sleazy motels. When are you going to leave Angela so we can really be together?" "Don't start this shit again," Nat Blake spat in annoyance. "You know damn well, it's not that simple. I've got too much to lose right now. My whole career, my money. Angela would bleed me dry and take my girls if she found out about us, and what about me? I'm just supposed to wait in the wings forever. Put up with Ethan pawing at me every night when all I can think about is being with you." Natalie shot back, her voice wavering. "Look, you knew what you were signing up for. I'm not the white picket fence type. But trust me, baby, no one makes you feel as good as I do. So how about you quit overthinking it and just enjoy the ride?" Blake purred. Cooper and I didn't wait around to find out. We had all the evidence we needed. He put an encrypted call into his federal contacts while I quietly see. It took every ounce of restraint not to beat down that door and introduce Blake's smug face to my fists. But this rat bastard needed to be put away for a lot longer than a simple assault charge would stick. Cooper promised his buddies at the FBI would make sure Blake rotted in prison for his laundry list of fraud and corruption. Nail him to the wall in a way that even his slick government contractor lawyers couldn't weasel out of. Get the proof of his affairs down to the field office tonight. That'll be the ammo they need for his wife to crucify him in divorce court and walk away with everything. Angela Peterson is about to be a very wealthy woman, Cooper said with a vengeful smile. Back at Hank's Tavern that evening, I couldn't stomach more than a few sips of my usual whiskey. Too busy envisioning the siege that was about to rain down on Blake and Natalie's blissful bubble of adultery. Jenna took one look at my glazed eyes and tense shoulders and poured me a tall glass of ice water instead. "You seem like you're wired tight enough to snap, Ethan. Why don't you talk to me? Let me help carry some of that load," she coaxed gently in a moment of raw honesty. The whole sordid tale came pouring out. Natalie's months of cheating Blake's white-collar crimes, the depths of betrayal and rage and devastation. Through it all, Jenna listened without judgment. "I had no idea you were going through something so awful, Ethan. You didn't deserve any of this," she said. "Doesn't feel that way, feels like I wasn't enough for her. Maybe if I'd been more attentive or adventurous in bed or made more money, she wouldn't have started screwing around," I said bitterly. Jenna's blue eyes flashed, and she grabbed my face between her warm hands, forcing me to meet her gaze. "You listen to me, Ethan Winters. You are a good man, eh? Kind, decent, hard-working man, and that is enough. Do you hear me? Natalie was selfish and cruel to do this to you and your kids. Her mistakes are not a reflection of your worth." "Thank you, Jenna. You've been such an unexpected light in all this darkness," I murmured. She smiled, but it was tinged with a sadness I couldn't quite place. "I know a thing or two about being broken by the people who are supposed to love you most. I would never wish that pain on anyone else." The moment passed, and she was all business again. "Now can I get you something to eat? You're no good to anyone if you pass out from an empty stomach." I managed a weak chuckle. "Yeah, you're right, burger and fries sounds perfect right about now." By the time I left Hank's that night, some of the darkness had begun to recede. With the truth firmly in my grasp and the wheels of justice starting to turn, I felt a sense of purpose return. Blake and Natalie had no idea the storm that was about to engulf them. Cooper's predictions proved spot on. Within 24 hours of turning over the incriminating evidence to the FBI, Blake Peterson was hauled out of the office in handcuffs. Angela filed for divorce that same afternoon, armed with proof of his rampant infidelity. Half his net worth and full custody of their daughters were about to become the least of his problems. "Sit down, Natalie. It's time you and I had a little chat," I said. Her brow creased in confusion, but she did as instructed, perching on the edge of a stool. "Ethan, what's going on? You're starting to scare me." "Did something happen with the kids?" A bark of humorless laughter escaped my throat. "No, Natalie, our children are just fine." Blissfully unaware that their mother is a lying, cheating whore. Natalie reeled back as if I'd slapped her, shock and panic warring on her face. How do you speak to me that way?" I slammed my hand down on the counter, cutting her sputtering denial short. "Save it, Natalie. I know everything. I know about Blake. I know about your secret motel hookups. I know about all the lies you've been spinning for months. So don't you dare sit there and keep insulting my intelligence." All the color drained from her face as the facade came crumbling down. "Oh God. Ethan, please let me explain." "Explain what is there to explain? You've been screwing your coworker and laughing about what a clueless idiot I am behind my back. Our entire marriage is built on a foundation of your deceit. There's no coming back from that," I said. Natalie reached across the island for my hand, but I snatched it away as if her touch burned. "Please, Ethan. It was a mistake. I was confused and lonely, and you've been so distant. I never meant to hurt you. It's you I love, it's always been you," she pleaded. I stared at the stranger wearing my wife's face and felt only disgust. "If you truly love me, you never could have done this. Destroy our family, our future, and for what, a few cheap thrills with a man who sees you as his plaything. You make me sick." I spat. A coldness seeped into my chest as I slid the divorce papers across the counter, the beginning of the end. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. You'll be hearing from them soon to sort out custody. But I want you out of this house, Natalie. You don't get to keep playing the devoted wife and mother after this." The mask of regret and false apologies fell away, then replaced by something ugly and bitter. "You sanctimonious bastard. You think you're so perfect. Maybe if you hadn't let yourself go and treated me like a real woman, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere," she hissed. I met her venom with stony indifference, refusing to let her poison take hold. "Tell yourself whatever you need to, Natalie. But we both know this is not my failure. You ruined this. You ruined us. And you're going to have to carry that for the rest of your miserable life." The divorce process was a painful blur, but I was determined to navigate it with as much grace and dignity as possible for the sake of my children. My lawyer, a shrewd and experienced woman named Diane, guided me through the legal labyrinth with a steady hand. She assured me that, with the overwhelming evidence of Natalie's infidelity, I had a strong case for a favorable settlement. Still, it was agonizing to sit across from the woman I had once pledged my life to, dividing up our assets and hashing out custody arrangements like we were mere business partners. Natalie had the audacity to fight me on every point, as if she hadn't been the one to shatter our vows and destroy our family with her selfish actions. The worst moment came when we had to break the news to Lily and Jack. Seeing the confusion and heartbreak on their innocent faces as we explained that Mommy and Daddy wouldn't be living together anymore was like a knife to the chest. I held them as they cried, fighting back my own tears, promising that I would always be there for them no matter what. In the end, we agreed to joint custody alternating weeks so that the children would have equal time with both parents. It wasn't ideal, but I knew it was important for Lily and Jack to maintain a relationship with their mother despite her betrayal. I had to be the bigger person to put their needs above my own anger and pain. Those first few months on my own with the kids were a challenge unlike any I had faced before. Learning to juggle work, household chores, and parenting solo tested me in ways I never could have imagined. There were nights when I collapsed into bed physically and emotionally drained, wondering how I was going to keep it all together. But in those moments of doubt, I drew strength from my children's resilience. Lily and Jack adapted to our new normal with a grace that astounded me. They stepped up to help around the house, learned to confide in me in ways they never had before. Slowly but surely we began to heal as a family unit of three. It wasn't easy explaining to the kids why their mother had done what she did. I refused to disparage Natalie in front of them, even though there was a part of me that wanted to lash out and make her the villain of the story. Instead, I focused on reassuring Lily and Jack that the divorce was not their fault, that they were loved beyond measure by both their parents, even if we couldn't be together anymore. As time passed, the wounds began to scab over. The pain of Natalie's betrayal would always be a part of me, a scar I would carry forever. But it no longer consumed my every waking moment. I learned to find joy and purpose in my new life, to focus on being the best father I could be for my children. There were still moments of anger, of course. Flashes of white-hot rage when I thought about all the lies Natalie had told, the elaborate deception she had maintained for months on end. In those instances, I leaned on Cooper and Jenna to talk me down from the ledge. They reminded me that holding on to bitterness would only poison my own soul in the end. So I made a choice to let go, to forgive Natalie, even though I knew I could never forget what she had done. Not for her sake, but for my own peace of mind and for the well-being of our children. I refused to let her selfish actions define me or control my future happiness. As the dust settled on our divorce, I realized that I was not only surviving but thriving in my new normal. Lily, Jack, and I grew closer than ever, forging an unbreakable bond through the fire of our shared pain. We learned to find laughter and light in the darkest of times, to cherish the little moments of happiness that life offered up. I knew our path forward wouldn't always be smooth. There would be bumps and detours along the way as the kids processed the trauma of the divorce and adjusted to our altered family dynamic. But I also knew that we would face those challenges together, armed with the knowledge that we could weather any storm as long as we had each other. The divorce may have been the closing chapter on the life I had once imagined for myself, but it was also the start of a new story. A story of resilience, of hope, of a man and his children rising from the ashes of betrayal to build something beautiful and breakable. And that was a legacy I could be proud of, no matter what the future held. Thank you. Don't forget to hit the like button, and if you are over 18, don't miss the next story.